Yay, you're here.
Hooray! Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, that was a whole thing.
Sorry for the 4 minutes of me rambling there, everybody.
Thank you for handling it, Leah. Holy moly. Hey guys, Amber, co-founder of Mediavine, here with you today. Jenny was supposed to be here. However, she had surgery on Monday and she optimistically thought that she could host today. We all told her she was nuts, but we've trying to get her to rest, and she has struggled with that. So I am just going to grab the interview document that disappeared when I had to restart my whole computer.
Sounds about right.
Yep. So one second.
Right, so I'm not actually seeing Leah. I'm only seeing
You're not. Everybody's here. I can see you, Christina, and I can see Leah. Can everybody see everybody?
Comment if you can see me. Oh God.
Because I have two of you, Christina, for some reason. I think the other connection that you tried to do from your computer is still active too.
Oh, really? So are you seeing anything? Is there like a black screen or?
It's like a wall, maybe? There it is. You just killed it.
Oh, I did. Okay. I'm just kidding. I'll leave that alone then. So I can't actually see or hear Leah, so maybe you're going to have to facilitate.
Okay. I'm moving everybody around a little bit so that we can get the best possible. Yeah.
And I just lost Amber's audio.
Oh
no,
live. Okay.
Back.
Leah, you're giving me heart attacks.
I'm having a heart attack, so I'm glad I can share it with you.
All right. So what we are doing today is we are talking about 5 ways to take your travel blogging to the next level. So let's see. I think basically, Leah, do you want to give some of your thoughts on that? And then Christina can give some of hers. And then we'll dive into some questions that we have.
Absolutely. Okay. So when Christina and I were kind of brainstorming, we were trying to think about like 5 ways that we can kind of elevate travel blogging. We don't want to talk about necessarily things that a lot of people know. Kind of what we're always focused on with Slaying Social is giving really actionable tips to help you take things to the next level and think about something that you may not have considered before. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is email marketing. So lots of advice about email marketing is out there, and most of it is telling you to build your email list, and it kind of stops there. It's great advice, build your email list. The reason why I think that email marketing and having an email list is really important is because you own that audience. That is your list. You have rights to it. You can do whatever you want. Nobody can change an algorithm or terms of service and take that away from you. So you have full control over it, which makes it a really valuable asset. Also, those are your people. Like, those are the people that have decided that they love you so much, they're going to allow you to come into their inboxes. So it is really, really crucial to be building that email list. And the best way to do that is by creating opt-ins. So an opt-in is something that somebody's going to get that's going to add value to your content on your blog. And it's going to be basically, it's almost like giving them a gift in exchange for having them become a subscriber. So really good opt-ins for travel blogging would be something like a map or a little guidebook, something that they can print and take with them or download and have on their phone. Those always do really well for me as long as it's tied to the content that I created. So having it really be an add-on value. Here's all this information, and if you want it in printable form, sign up for my email list. And then the big question, I think, is what to do after you get that email list. How often do you email them? Should you be sending out newsletters? So I personally send out a monthly newsletter, but I also have sequences. I'm using ConvertKit, and I have sequences that are basically tied to each of my opt-ins, which means I know that my readers are planning a trip to a destination. So let's say that I have an opt-in that is a walking map for San Francisco. I'm going to send them a bunch of emails about San Francisco so that they can see all of my San Francisco content. That's going to familiarize them with my travel blog, help them have a better trip, which is my whole goal, and also build a relationship of trust, which is then going to keep them coming back and keep them listening to my advice. So that's definitely, I think, a great kind of strategy, and it's been really working for me. I've built a lot. I built about 7,000 newsletter subscribers that way, so I highly recommend that.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was my first thing on the list.
Christina, do you have something to add along those lines?
All right, so I just to reiterate for the audience, I can't hear Leah or actually see her, so I apologize if there's any overlap in what I say. But I think Leah was just talking about the importance of having an email list and a platform that you own yourself, and I do think that that's one of the first things that you should consider when you're trying to take your travel blog to the next level, because I feel like a lot of travel bloggers, you kind of hop on to all these social media platforms and you want to become the next big thing on Instagram, or you want to be the next big thing on Twitter. But you don't really take into account the fact that you don't own these platforms. If they go under, tomorrow, then you're in a bit of a sticky situation. So one of the things that I've been working really hard at over the past year is really building my email list, just through having opt-ins, getting these people's emails, just because at the end of the day, that is the one secure way that you have that you can reach these people if all your social media platforms go under. And I do think that's really important. And the second main thing that we wanted to talk about as well is the importance of in-person networking, because that's another thing that I've just started to do this past year, which is going to networking events, going to conferences, and actually meeting people face-to-face. And I think we travel bloggers, we're really, really good at getting to know people online. We send all sorts of email pitches, and we meet travel blogger friends in Facebook groups and everything. But at the end of the day, if you have that solid face-to-face connection, that connection is so much more valuable than any online relationship that you build. And so this past year, I've gone to a few different conferences where I've networked in person with tourism board officials and with brands that I want to work with. And it's just been so much easier, so much more fruitful, especially moving forward with so many bloggers in this space. One of the things that I hear time and time again from different brands is that if they meet you in person, then they can gauge whether or not you're legitimate and whether or not they can trust you, because these brands are getting inundated with emails every day, probably dozens of emails from influencers, and they have no idea, no way to tell if they're legit or not. And so I think that's definitely one of the other really important things that you need to start doing if you want to step up your game and really take your travel blog to the next level. It's to start going to these events, going to these conferences, meeting other bloggers, meeting brands. That's definitely super important.
Yeah, and I'd like to add just a couple of really good examples, I think. So there are a lot of travel blogging conferences, which are a fantastic way to meet other travel bloggers, as Christina mentioned, and to network with brands. There's also travel industry fairs, so like ITB in Berlin, IPW here in the United States. Those aren't necessarily, they aren't conferences, there's not going to be speakers, and there's going to be a lot more brands than there are other content creators, but they are.
So if I were to recommend a few different conferences, because I'm based in Europe, I guess that my answers are more geared towards bloggers who are also based here. But the ones that I went to this past year were World Travel Market in London, and then the International, and then ITB in Berlin. And both of those are really, really great. Particularly the speed networking events, because these two are giant travel trade fairs. And so you have all sorts of people, tour operators wanting to meet with tourism boards, and all sorts of people trying to make connections. But when you get into these speed networking events, then you're actually able to meet with brands who are interested in talking to bloggers. And that really takes a lot of the work out of it, a lot of the guesswork. So I would definitely recommend those two for sure.
And I'm going to add another one. So if you've ever heard of Travel Massive, it's essentially.
I'm trying to get into my laptop to tune into the live. But of course, I've got the rainbow wheel of death. So the timing is just perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so Travel Massive, it's essentially like LinkedIn for the travel industry. So it's a worldwide network. They have chapters all over the world, and you can actually show up at like a local event in your area and meet other local travel bloggers as well as other travel industry professionals. So everybody from travel agents to anybody working in the industry. I've met some really cool people through Travel Massive. And I'm actually a chapter lead for the San Francisco chapter of Travel Massive. So if you are a travel industry professional and you're interested in some networking events, please let me know. I'd be happy to add you to our mailing list and everything. But travelmassive.com, it's a really kind of easy introductory way to get your feet wet with in-person marketing, or in-person networking, sorry. So we've got a question. Can you speak to the types of opt-ins that convert well for travel-specific blog posts? Absolutely. So I mentioned things that tie directly into your content. So something that adds value. You want to think about, here's the content that I'm delivering. How can I make this even easier for my readers and add value? So I mentioned if you write a walking tour or like a self-guided walking tour, to add a printable for that. I've even had that work for me for destinations where you might not have Wi-Fi while you're traveling there. So like an international destination, I think it makes a lot of people nervous, the idea of kind of going off book a little bit. And I think it helps, even if you've put all this wonderful detailed information into your blog post, I find it really helpful to have that all like on your phone, even if you're offline. So condensing it into an ebook or a guide that somebody can download as a PDF and have on their phone, that adds value, but you don't actually have to create anything extra because you're just taking what you already wrote and sticking it into printable form. So I've had a lot of success with that as well. And the great thing about tying it directly to your content is that then you know these people are planning a trip to this destination. I have maybe, depending on how far in advance they're planning, I have a couple of months before they go there. So you can even think about their purchasing cycle and the steps that they're going to be taking and try to fit your sequence into that purchasing cycle so that, you know, you're helping them book a place to stay, you're helping them figure out what to pack all the way up until they leave for their trip, and you're kind of guiding them each step of the way, which builds a lot of trust with your audience, which I think is really cool. So, okay.
Very cool.
Moving along, Christina, let me know if you can hear me. I'm really excited to, I guess not. Okay, so on to the next topic. Now I can't hear Christina. Oh God, that's fine. We'll just keep going. Okay, knowing your product. So that's a really great.
I can now. I just ran to get headphones, so sorry. That was a little
bit.
Yay!
I missed you. It was so difficult. Okay.
Now you can't hear me?
No, I can hear you. Maybe I'm on a delay. I think we're on like a time zone delay because she's in Germany and I'm in California, I think. Okay, knowing your product.
There's a bit of a delay by like 10 seconds.
Yep, that'll be it. I'll take it. That's better than nothing. So it's really important to know exactly who your audience is and exactly what your strengths are as a travel content creator. So having a niche, knowing what locations you specialize in, knowing what topics you're really an expert in is going to help you define where you can offer value to your readers, and also knowing what your readers are looking for and what they're seeking. So for example, I'm a budget travel blogger, which means I can never write about luxury, which sucks for me, but it means that I can focus on providing really good content for my readers because I know what price range they're willing to book. I know that they're never going to book anything above $200, which again, too bad for me, but it is what it is. And I've learned to actually become an expert in this budget space and really become a voice of, you know, here's how to travel on a budget. Here's how to find good hostels. Here's how to save some money. And I never want to reach outside of that comfort zone because A, it's going to alienate my audience, and B, I'm not an expert on luxury travel. Like when I try to stay in nice places, I just feel really awkward and uncomfortable. So sticking with something that you know and that's familiar and really owning it, becoming an expert is going to really benefit you and your audience as well, because you'll be providing better, higher value and more impactful content for them. And we'll just wait for Christina to catch up.
Excellent. All right. Christina is going to take the next one when she can hear all of us and know that Leah's done.
It'll be fun just sitting here and watching her face.
All right.
Yeah, she's pretty cute.
So the next thing that we really want to talk about is just the fact that when you're a travel blogger, it's really important that you have very defined goals. And what we mean by that is, it's weird. Sorry, it's like I can hear myself on the delay now, so that's a little bit strange. But essentially, when we all first started travel blogging, I think we were all kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit, in the sense that we would just write blog posts, publish them without really thinking about what our end goal is. And I still see that a lot with beginner bloggers. They're chasing all these goals. Like they want to grow on Instagram, but they're not really sure why. Like it feels like the right thing to do, but they don't know how it plays into their overall strategy. And similarly, a lot of people are chasing that goal of becoming, popular or famous or well-known, when in reality, they're just trying to, make money and be profitable with their blog. So what we've come to realize is that it's super important for you to first understand what your goal is, whether that's, making income or going on paid press trips or passive income, whatever that may be. You need to first figure out what your goal is and then reverse engineer the ways that you can make that goal happen. Because if your goal is passive income and you spend 10 hours a day on Instagram liking photos, that's not going to help you towards your end goal. And so that's definitely one of the things that you really need to keep in mind if you're hoping to take your blog or your business a little bit more seriously. It's that you need to have concrete goals in mind and know how to reach them and, work in very strategic ways to make those goals happen.
I love that. Leah, did you have anything to add to that?
I think that all I would add is that defining your goals can change and evolve over time. So your goals at the very beginning of your blog's journey may be different than they are a year or 2 years down the road. So for example, a year ago, my blog was still pretty new. I started mine in July 2016. So actually, this is my 2-year month. Happy anniversary.
Thank
you. So a year ago, my goal was to really drive traffic and to start landing sponsorships and brand partnerships. And this year, I've decided that I'm happy with my traffic, so traffic is no longer my concern. And I actually want to be pickier about the sponsorships that I do. And I want to focus more on my passive income streams so that I don't have to accept as many brand sponsorships. And instead, I can really focus on creating impactful content that speaks to issues that I really care about that affect the travel space, things like sustainability, things like social justice, social responsibility, environmentalism. I want to find ways to work that into my content in a way that feels more authentic and more meaningful. So my focus has completely kind of switched. My blog is still the same. It's going to still provide the same values. And I'm actually even more comfortable now with my blog and with my brand than I ever was a year or two ago. But my goals have completely shifted as I've been able to progress and experience and figure out what I like and what's working for me and learn about what doesn't feel so good.
Excellent. So apparently I have a super deep voice thanks to my mic. I don't know what's going on. Everyone's like, Amber, your voice is not right. So that's fun, guys. What I wanted to do now, move on to some of the questions that we collected. So one of the first ones was how to make the leap from getting comped travel to getting paid travel packages.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think a lot of travel bloggers struggle with that because it sounds like really, really cool to get this fully comped experience, to get, a free flight maybe and a free hotel. And I say free, but I don't really mean free because you're working. So it sounds free when you haven't ever had it before. But after you do a few trips that are comped, and then you create the content afterwards, it becomes really exhausting really quickly. And you start to feel like, not that you're getting this fabulous free stay and all this free stuff, but you start to feel like you're working for free and it's maybe a little bit exhausting. So once you reach that point where the glamour has sort of worn off a little bit and you're seeing it more as a job, I think that helps you kind of buck up your confidence a little bit and your courage to actually ask for that money. And really, that's the best tip that I can give you is you have to ask. I know it sounds too easy to be true, but it's so difficult to have that conversation and say, hey, can you pay me for this? So my tip would be, work it into the conversation with the brand as early as possible. You don't want to get halfway down the road and be talking about the deliverables that you're going to produce and your schedule and then say, by the way, can you pay me? You want to have that conversation as early as possible. So when your first pitch email to a brand or when a brand reaches out to you for the first time, especially when they reach out to you, because that means they want you and they know your value, you need to mention payment. You don't have to ask like directly, my kind of favorite workaround is to say, I'd love to hear about the budget that you're working with, or, you know, does your budget allow for you to, you know, provide a daily rate or a deliverable fee? I use the word budget because that's what DMOs and CBBs are completely obsessed with. Like, that's their day-to-day that they really need to focus on. If their budget doesn't have a line for, you know, a fam trip, then you're not going to get paid. And it's best to have that conversation up front. And as you're having that conversation, you need to have a number in mind that you're willing to accept and a number that you're going to be willing to walk away from if they can't meet. So knowing your value, knowing your worth, and knowing that you're willing to say no if it's not an opportunity that meets your needs is going to be really crucial.
Right. That actually speaks to that just came in. Meg Kale said, can you speak to growing traffic with the goal of passive income? What are the actionable tips for gaining more readers and being able to say no without phone? Christina, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, hey, Meg, first of all, hey, how are you doing? Thanks for being here. And so when we're talking about, you know, growing passive income, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. In terms of, you know, growing it through, there's two ways you can do it, really. You can monetize a loyal audience that you have, or you can create content that is very much directed towards gaining that passive income, if that makes sense. So that second way, I think, is one that might be a little bit easier. And so for me, what I like to do is, you know, when you're creating something, creating a piece of content with the goal of creating passive income in the future, you want to look at what's going to be catching people in their buying phase, right? So if someone's Googling, you know, inspirational photos of Paris, they're not necessarily going to go into that post and then book a hotel right away or book a tour package just based on that inspirational post. Whereas if they're Googling something like the best mid-range hotels in this Parisian neighborhood, you know that when they're Googling something like that, they've got their credit card in their hand and they're ready to buy. And so one of the best ways to really grow your passive income, especially through SEO, is by creating articles that are directly geared towards catching people in this stage, this buying stage on Google, and creating content directly that caters to them. And I think one of the things that people kind of struggle with when it comes to creating this kind of content is they think that it's bland, or they think that it doesn't fit their niche, or that it's like kind of selling out in a sense. But I don't agree with that. I think that if you create this kind of content and it's going to help someone and provide value to someone, then that's content that's worth creating. And another thing is, you know, you can create these articles, but they don't necessarily have to exist on the front page of your website, right? You don't have to have a featured post, the top hotels to stay in. You can just have it on your site as a resource for people to find through Google, Pinterest, if they're in that phase. And so that's one of the best ways, I think, to really get those readers in, is just through creating articles that are optimized for affiliates, are optimized for people in the buying phase, and then target those keywords and, you know, get those pins up. It just the same way that you would build traffic normally, you know, except by creating content that really is geared towards buyers. That's when you're going to get that passive income rolling, for sure. And I think in
totally agree.
Types of content, what works really well are packing lists. Things like packing lists, people are constantly Googling those. I know I'm always Googling them, even though they're quite boring to write. They do really well in terms of converting to money. As well, you know, hotel posts and like itineraries as well. People can be very lazy with their trip planning. So if you were able to create an itinerary that has different tours kind of sprinkled throughout, that's going to be, there's a high likelihood that those people are going to book those tours. So those are just
I love that. We actually talk about that a lot. I don't want to steal any thunder, but when we have content, we always talk about writing for your Google audience versus your loyal audience. Yeah. And that you just explained it all perfectly, Christina. It was music to my ears, really. I hope to the listeners right now, or watchers, really. So what are ways that you guys are monetizing in general? Leah, Christina, why don't you go first and then Leah?
Yeah, for sure. So I think all the travel bloggers watching this right now will know that there's like a million different income streams for a travel blogger. So for me, Mediavine is one of the top ones for me, just because it's so stable and consistent. Like, I can't tell you guys how much you've changed my travel blog career, like to fangirl a little bit. Like, it's been so good ever since I've gone to Mediavine, knowing that every day you're going to make X amount. That just takes so much of the burden off your shoulders. So ads is definitely one. Affiliate income we just touched on as well. Another thing for me is I actually have a brand ambassadorship that I recently signed with an awesome company. that came out of my expertise, I guess, in Munich, which is where I'm currently based. And so I'm a local expert for Go Euro, which is a company I've always loved. And so when they took me on as a brand ambassador, that was amazing because that was like, a contract. Like I have a contract now, and I get paid monthly to create certain types of content for them. And that's awesome. So I guess those three would be my main ones. I mean, I do the occasional sponsored post, but these days not as much. For me, my goal really is passive income because I really don't like being a slave to sponsored posts and having to pitch and having to go back and forth with brands. I'd much rather just, make my money through ads and through affiliates. I think, so those are my three.
Before we move to Leah on that same topic, do you have any recommendations on good tour and hotel affiliates? And then we'll ask Leah the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the problem with this is that it totally depends on where your readers are based. So whereas I found that, some programs work well with an American audience, I've heard that Asian audiences are completely different. So it really depends on where your readers are coming from. For me personally, because the majority of my content is about Europe, tour affiliate that works super well for me, I have two. So Get Your Guide works really, really well because they used to advertise on their website that they have a low price guarantee. So if you're able to find that tour anywhere else on the internet, then they'll take 10% off or something. And that's a really great thing to mention in your blog post because then you can be like, hey, this place guarantees you the best price. So that pretty much guarantees that they're going to click over to that. The other one that works quite well is Viator, which I'm sure you've heard of. So both of those, I essentially go by whichever one has the better selection or the better tour because their selection is still quite different. But I find that Get Your Guide and Viator both convert really, really well for Europe content. And as for hotel affiliates, for me, Booking.com has consistently worked the best just because I think people are really attracted by the fact that it's so easy and convenient. So those are the ones that work well for me. But again, test it with your audience and see what converts best because it completely depends. And that's a really frustrating answer, but hopefully that clears things up a little bit.
Right. How about you, Leah? What are your thoughts here?
Definitely, I'm going to reiterate for tours, Get Your Guide is fantastic for Europe content. I think they have a lot of brand recognition in Europe, but not so much in the United States. I have difficulty selling tours through Get Your Guide in the US for US destinations and to US audiences, which is primarily my audience. I also didn't realize that Viator is pronounced like Viator. I definitely pronounce it Viator. So my bad, learned something today. But Viator is great for US content, for US destinations and for US audiences. They've got great brand recognition because they're owned by TripAdvisor, and TripAdvisor has great brand recognition. So you have to think about what is your audience familiar with and what will actually get them to convert. There's a reason why Amazon does so well for audiences where Amazon is really common, especially in the US, because it does a great job of converting. So when you use Amazon, you're not just saying buy this product, you're saying buy it through Amazon. So they have to be a little familiar with the brand. I have found that Booking.com does not work for my audience. Could be because it's a budget audience and they aren't really into hotels as much. Could be because Booking.com just doesn't have that trust in the United States quite as much as it does elsewhere. So a hotel affiliate that works better for me is Hotels Combined. Hotels Combined is like a search engine for all these different budget brands. So Booking.com is on there, Hotels.com, Expedia. It's like Kayak for hotels. It searches all of them at once for you. So it's a really easy sell to tell my readers, hey, I'm going to save you a step. You don't have to do all this comparison shopping. Just use this one website, Hotels Combined. And the beauty of Hotels Combined is that they pay for click and for lead, not for booking. So my readers will sometimes click through something because they're curious. And this is why you'll always see me recommending something way out of my budget, like a luxury place, and I'll call it out. I'll be like, I can't afford this place and I could never stay here, but it's baller. Look at this pool. And that'll get people to click through just because they want to see what the pool looks like or whatever. And then I get 10 cents. So, I mean, it's not, it's not like the big bucks, but it does add up. So I earn, a steady amount on Hotels Combined through that. But for me, my best accommodation, because I have a budget audience, is actually Hostel World. So that's even a smaller amount per booking, but it really does convert really well because every backpacker loves and uses Hostel World.
That's really cool to know. Fun fact, I used to work for Travelocity.
Oh, cool. No, right?
Yes, the gnome.
That's great.
Oh, the gnome. A lot of people don't know that internally his name is Sparky.
Okay.
Yeah. Big question along these lines is, how do you travel all the time and afford everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess I'll start. So in the United States, travel and affordable don't necessarily go together, right? So it actually costs me about the same to fly home to see my family in Kentucky from California as it does for me to fly to London, like just because of the way that direct flights work and budget airlines, and it's just a whole mess. So it is challenging. And because I am a budget traveler and a budget travel writer, those actually kind of work in my favor because I'm always trying to find the cheapest way to travel. And when I do find that, I can pass it along to my readers. I don't have to pretend that I have the money to stay super fancy places because I don't. So I get to be really honest with my readers about that. So for me, I do use a lot of the typical tricks. So I use credit card miles and points to book most of my my flight tickets. I have a Southwest hub right by me in Oakland that has a lot of really cheap tickets, and I was able to get a companion pass because I used a credit card deal, not because I had that many flights. So that really helps. I can take advantage of really cheap flights that are sort of these last minute deals because I'm a full-time travel blogger, which means I have the flexibility. I don't have to worry about vacation days. That's a huge help. And then when I arrive, I'm staying in hostels. And if I'm not staying in a hostel, I'm working with a hotel. So that is a comped package that I don't have to pay for the hotel, but I'm going to have to work my butt off when I get back home, which is the trade-off. I do also, I get those comped fam trips, which means that they're paying for me to go and everything is going to be comped. So that's kind of when I'm able to splurge a little bit more. But when it's on my own budget, which it often is, I'm really traveling as cheaply as possible. And I'm using all of the tips and tricks, there we go, that I'm writing about for my blog. So I'm testing them and I'm learning them and I'm refining them.
Christina?
Yeah, so for me, I am super spoiled because I live in Munich, Germany, which is pretty much as central as it gets when it comes to Europe. And so within Europe, it's so ridiculously cheap to travel. And so I can go to a place for a weekend. I recently went to the Balkans and I flew into Skopje, Macedonia. It only cost like 70 euros round trip for those flights. And I spent 10 days there, which is not even the cheapest deal I've gotten. I remember the first time I ever backpacked in Europe. I couldn't believe the prices I was seeing. I actually caught an overnight bus from Paris to London for £2, which is like,
Wow.
Yeah, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate in that I specialize in European travel, and it's very cheap for me to travel around the continent. But similar to Leah, obviously having a travel blog and partnering with brands really helps to offset those costs a lot of the time. And so often I'll be partnering with hotels or tourism boards, and so I don't have to necessarily pay huge amounts of money to travel. But even when I'm doing it independently, it doesn't cost me that much just because I'm so close to everything, and there are so many budget airlines in Europe now. There's just like 3 popping up a day. So it's really just super easy to be traveling just because of my geographical location.
Something that I forgot to mention too is that I budget to have travel be the biggest part of my expenses every month and every year, other than rent, which nothing could ever top that because I live in the Bay Area. And I've done this actually since I graduated from college and started working. I had a travel section in my budget. It was like rent, food, travel, and now I think it's rent, travel, food. And I try to really live as frugally as possible. So you won't see me like buying a lot of clothes. You'll see me re-wearing the same stuff in all of my pictures. I mean, again, I'm a budget blogger, so I feel like that's on brand, but it's also
yeah.
And if I do, I'm going to go to a thrift store or like a used clothing store or something like that. Like I live the kind of lifestyle that I would recommend that my readers be living, cook your meals at home and make your own coffee and don't buy stuff you don't need and like that kind of thing. And then because I'm able to like save money at home, I can splurge sometimes when I'm traveling, and that's when I get to eat out, and I get to eat out every single day if I want. And when I go home, I'm going to be cooking every day. So it's kind of this trade-off.
Excellent. Okay. So kind of a yes or no question for both of you. You can just nod or shake your heads. Is having a page with affiliates a good strategy or not?
That's a great, I've been meaning to do that for like 2 years.
Okay. And then this is more along a blogging question. This is from Jen, how do you get your posts to do well on Pinterest, group boards, or tails?
So I'll take this one because I'm kind of the Pinterest expert for Slaying Social. So Pinterest is actually what I credit with driving my first kind of big hit of traffic. I was able to drive 20,000 visitors a month in my first 6 months of blogging, entirely thanks to Pinterest. And I sort of had to wait for Google to catch up to me. So I absolutely love Pinterest. I will say that they've really changed it up this year, and we're all kind of scrambling to figure out what the next best thing is. And it's definitely something I'm looking into quite a lot. But I will say it's not an either or right now. It's not group boards or tailwind tribes. Group boards they've been announced by Pinterest that they're not going to continue to be as important, but I haven't yet found that they're irrelevant. Like, they're not quite dead yet. So I'm still using them. I'm using Tailwind mostly to schedule it out to all of my group boards when I launch a new pin. I am also using Tailwind tribes, and I'm also using Facebook Repin threads. And that's something that in the travel community, we have a lot of really good Facebook Repin thread groups that basically you're going to share 100 pins or so, and 100 people are going to share yours. And when you do that in conjunction with sharing to all your group boards and your own personal boards, and also submitting to Tailwind tribes, that's going to build this sort of momentum and engagement that's going to signal to Pinterest that this is a high quality pin. And as long as you're getting conversions from that engagement, as in people are clicking through and clicking save organically, then that's going to help set your pin up for success. So it continues to kind of go viral a little bit, which is always the goal for a good pin.
Awesome. Okay, we actually have a question directly for Christina, and then I'm going to go back to our list. Christina, you mentioned partnering with tourism boards. How would you go about doing out? Any key things to say or not say when reaching out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is kind of the big question for a lot of beginner bloggers, like making that transition into working with tourism boards and partnering with brands. And I think the most important piece of advice that I can give is you need to know what value you can provide in exchange for these partnerships, because it's not as simple as going up to a brand and asking for, stuff for free, because that's not how it works. If you don't have an audience yet, or you don't have amazing content, or you don't have some kind of value to offer, then it's going to be really tough to convince someone to work with you. And so what I would say is, if you're just starting out, kind of look at your audience and recognize what it is that you can offer to a tourism board. So let's say if you are planning to go to Paris, and you know that Paris is really popular with this particular audience, and that happens to be an overlap with your audience, then you can send them a very tailored email pitch and be like, hey, I noticed that you've been trying to target people, in this age group, or you're trying to promote this initiative in your city. Well, my blog is exactly about that, and I have X amount of followers, I have X amount of readers, and they've shown to me in the past that my recommendations have influenced them. And if you're able to bundle up all these things and show to the brand that you're able to provide some kind of value, then that's going to make it really hard for them to turn you down. And so initially, I think when you're pitching, one of the most important things is you need to know that you're connecting with the right person. I think that's the ultimate, newbie error that people make. It's that, if they want to partner with a hotel, they just email the reception email. But that's not going to work, because they get hundreds of emails from disgruntled people every day. They're probably not going to look through your pitch and look at your media kit and think, okay, I'm going to pass this on to my manager. So right from the get-go, you have to make sure that you're contacting the right person. So that means looking at the tourism board's, media page and looking for a press contact, or looking at that hotel's page and looking for a marketing contact, someone who's going to be in charge of, bringing bloggers in. So that's really important. And also just creating a media kit, getting those first partnerships under your belt is really important. But what's even more important is following up with those partnerships and nurturing them and asking them for testimonials. Because if you have one successful partnership, and afterwards they really liked your blog post, or they said that there was an increase in bookings or whatever, if you can get them to say that, even just a quote, that's going to make it so much easier in the future for you to approach more brands, because then you can say, hey, in the past I've worked with this brand that's similar to yours and they saw these results. And so I think that's a really powerful thing that a lot of people forget. They forget to get testimonials after, which is really, really important. And in addition to that, also make sure you have a work with me page on your blog that kind of details all the reasons why brands would want to work with you. Because trust me, PR people, they're constantly on the web looking for new bloggers to partner with. And if they land on your site and they don't see an easy place for them to access all your stats or to access, how they can work with you, then they're going to leave, because there's like hundreds of other bloggers who have that work with me page. So I guess
For sure.
Up that rant, it's to make sure you're contacting the right person. Make sure you have some kind of value to offer before you start pitching. And also make sure that you make it very easy for people to partner with you if they want to. So have your email visible, have that work with me page. So yeah, I guess those are my beginner tips.
Yep. And I will say, if anyone wants some help with a work with me page, you can go and watch Jenny and Steffi's session from our conference. They talk very specifically about that, because I think they're as passionate about it as you are, Christina, for sure. And they give some really actionable tips for that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's have Christina start with this one and then move to Leah. Are there things in the blogging world that are impacting travel bloggers differently? Instagram changing the algorithm, diversifying between Instagram influencers and actual travel bloggers, that sort of thing.
So do you mean like specific issues that impact us as travel bloggers, I guess?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, for
Sorry,
sure.
Working off Jenny's sheet.
Yeah, travel is a very unique niche in the sense that I feel like travel blogging is quite young compared to a lot of the other blogging niches that are out there. Food blogs and like lifestyle blogs have been around forever, but I feel like, travel blogs taking this spotlight, it's still like a relatively recent phenomenon. And so I think one of like the biggest concerns, and Leah kind of alluded to this earlier, is that as travel bloggers, we have a huge amount of responsibility to promote responsible travel and sustainable travel, which is a huge burden to carry on your shoulders when you're like, okay, I'm just a blogger. Like, what can I do? But, regardless of how big your audience is, if you have 100 followers or you have like 100,000, you have people who are willing to listen to you. You have people that you have some sort of influence over. So there's a huge responsibility on your shoulders to make sure you're promoting the right messages and you're promoting travel in a way that's responsible. And I think that that's something that has been coming up a lot. It's just the fact that, okay, like as travel bloggers, what are our implications in things like over tourism, or, what is our carbon footprint when we fly so often, things like that. And I think it's something that we as an industry really need to tackle and start addressing, because it's all well and good to promote a destination and to say, hey, travel is awesome, you should do it. But we also want to be people who promote it in a very sustainable way and a responsible way. And so I think that's one of like the emerging issues right now, for sure, because, our industry is still so young. There's not a ton of guidelines. There's not like a council of travel bloggers necessarily that give you these rules that you have to abide by. And so I think that's definitely what makes it tough. But what really helps is the fact that we do have these online communities. We have all these Facebook groups where we can bounce ideas off of each other. And so that really helps. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that's most pertinent to travel as an industry.
And I also want to say that this is something that Christina and I hold very near and dear to both of our hearts. And we've actually just relaunched our travel blogging resource site, which is called Slaying Social, to focus on these issues. And we're going to be talking about the how and the why of travel blogging. So not just how to grow your blog or how to monetize it, but also why does it matter? Why should we care? Why is it important? And what is our responsibility to explore those issues, and how do we do so responsibly? So we love, if you're interested in those things, you can just go to slayingsocial.com or search for our Facebook group, and we're kind of tackling those issues right now.
Oh, that is awesome. So let me grab a question from the comments. Do you guys have recommendations on finding brands that offer ambassadorships, or do you recommend reaching love and inquiring about a partnership?
Yeah, so recently I've noticed that ambassadorship in the travel sphere is synonymous with affiliate partnership, which is not what you want out of an ambassadorship. So an ambassadorship should really be like what Christina was talking about, where you're on a contract and you're getting paid monthly to produce a set number of deliverables. It should not mean that you have to sell something in order to get paid. That's an affiliate partnership. So brand ambassadorships within the travel sphere are not very common. They're like these prize golden eggs that you don't kind of get them very easily. And obviously I don't have one, so I'll let Christina speak to that. But I will say that you're not going to get a lot of things in your inbox from brands asking you for those brand ambassadorships unless you are at a position where you're an expert in your field and in your niche and you have a lot of visibility and you're nurturing those relationships. That's gonna be when you're gonna get opportunities landing in your inbox. And until that point, you gotta get real comfortable with pitching. You gotta put yourself out there, find a brand that you love and that you use, and particularly you want to find brands that your readers and your audience loves and uses. And if you can show that you love it and that your audience vibes with it, you can actually sell a partnership based on kind of an existing partnership on your own blog. So for example, this is something I'll be doing later this year, we'll see, but I have a set amount of products that I recommend because I use them all the time and I travel with them constantly, and I recommend them as well. And they sell really, really well on Amazon. So I'm gonna actually take those numbers and I'm gonna kind of distill them into a report, and I'm gonna send that pitch to the brand and ask if we can develop this partnership further by pointing at my numbers and saying, my readers like this, they like this percent, and I sell this many. So I think having that value that you can showcase and that you can speak to and say why your audience and your niche is a perfect fit for that brand is gonna help that pitch, but you are gonna need to be pitching for those, yeah.
Christina?
Yeah, so I think for my partnership with Go Euro, they were the ones that reached out to me. And so I don't really have advice to pitch a brand ambassadorship necessarily with a company, but what I will say is really when it comes to becoming an ambassador, what's important is that you are an expert in something. And I think that that's something that has a lot of people have lost sight of in the travel blogging world. You know, they try to blog, they go everywhere, so they try to blog about everywhere. But for me, what really landed me this partnership was my expertise in Munich, in one specific city, because they were looking for someone who had thorough practical resources, someone who was young and fit with their demographics. And then they found me. And so I think it's really important that you're able to, you know, show people that you're an expert in something. And I think a lot of people struggle with finding a niche because they think, oh, I'm interested in so many things. Like, I'm not just a luxury traveler, I'm also this. And they really struggle with picking. But the thing is, you know, you can have a niche, you can pick that niche and become an expert in it. But that doesn't limit you in the sense that you can't do any other kinds of travel, right? So I do think it's important to have that niche and that thing that you're an expert in. So for me, that was Munich. And not a lot of people were writing about Munich like 2 years ago when I moved here. And then I developed those resources, and now I'm seen kind of as an authority in that space. And I think that that's something that's really important. If you are wanting to work with brands on a long-term basis, you need to have an expertise that you can offer them. So whether that's like a geographical niche like mine, if you want to become an expert in one particular region, or you want to become an expert in a very specific kind of travel. So there's some people who have become very well known in their space for being total luxury travelers, you know, like staying at the nicest resorts. There's this one Instagram account I love. They're called Vacation Couple, and they specialize specifically in resorts in like exotic locations. And they spun that into a really awesome brand ambassadorship with escapes.ca, which is a Canadian company. So it's really, I think,
very jealous right now.
Yeah, if you're trying to land those ambassadorship deals, you really need to develop an expertise and own a specific space, specific sub niche within travel, because it's going to be really tough for a brand to look at you and want to work with you if you're just all over the place and just have like very shallow surface content for a bunch of places, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would say call for a niche, establish authority, and that's the way to do it.
Awesome. Okay, so you guys know this is the year of video at Mediavine, right? So how are you guys tackling video as travel bloggers?
I'm gonna let Christina
take that. For me, I'm trying really hard to incorporate video into like, you know, my toolkit. So I am actively working on an IGTV series that I've been meaning to launch for like the past week, but I'm just waiting to make sure it's perfect, because I think IGTV is this new platform. It could totally flip-flop, or it could be the next big thing. And you know, it's
right. And you mean Instagram TV, right? IGTV is Instagram TV. I just want to make sure everybody.
Not very often in the social media space that a new thing like this comes along that you can conquer and adopt early. And so that's why for me, I am like very much taking a gamble, and I'm going to try really hard to like make a push for IGTV, because right now, think about the competition that you have compared to YouTube or another social media platform. Not that many creators are using IGTV right now. So if you're able to hop on, use it properly, and become like an early adopter and build that audience, that'll make you so valuable and it'll really make you stand out. We saw this I guess a year and a half ago when Facebook started really pushing video. So video was a big thing that I started doing, and that worked really well for a while. And then Mark Zuckerberg decided to change the algorithm again. And that stopped working as well as before. So that's the thing with our industry. You have to constantly be on your toes. But I think that one trend that isn't going to change is just video. You're going to need to learn how to develop videos, whether that's just editing on your phone or like creating captivating stories on Instagram. I don't think video is going to change. And I think it's really important that you get those skills in now.
For sure. Leah?
And I also want to add, so I don't currently make video. It's something that I've been meaning to do. I happen to be married to a guy who teaches video editing, which is great for me. Actually, it's great for his students, but it's not great for me because he doesn't have time to do it. So it's like, there's something in my brain that's like, I shouldn't have to do this, but I need to just suck it up. But I'll say that Christina is very humble. She's actually like a master at making travel videos. And if you like check out the Happy to Wander Facebook page, her travel Facebook videos are incredible. And she actually created a course for Slaying Social that's all about Facebook video and how to edit it. She covers 3 different programs. I'm like trying to work my way through her course, and I'm just like, this is amazing. Like it's really like soup to nuts. It's very complicated for me to figure out. It's something that it's like down on my to-do list, like underneath make an affiliate resources page or whatever. But yeah, it's not something I've tried yet, and I'm still kicking myself because I know I'm behind. I know video is the future, and I'm over here like posting on Instagram stories, and I'm like, that's a video, right?
It's a video you can download and put on your blog and make money on, Leah.
I haven't tried that either. I'm terrible.
Maybe do that, friend. Maybe do that. I hope you're doing that too, Christina, that you're uploading to your Mediavine dashboard and making money on those, because it's a big deal. I mean, I know a couple we just did those like top 5 posts on my site right now, videos using still photos. And even that, some people over a month's time, depending on their traffic, are dollars. Like, it's important.
Now I feel really behind. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry. I want you to be making as much money as possible. So what would you say about a foundation of organic travel content that isn't sponsored? Are important to your audience, do you think?
Absolutely.
And why?
Yeah, so I think it's really, really crucial. I don't think that anybody that starts a blog and goes right to sponsorships it's gonna come off as really inauthentic, right? It's just not, you're not gonna be able to really build an organic audience, I think, through that, unless you'd have to, like, I don't know, buy followers to make yourself seem like you have a fabulous life. Like, there's a con artist in New York recently who did this really successfully, and she's now in prison. But I don't recommend it. Don't do that. So I think that you have to create sort of this organic, authentic voice and build trust with your audience before you can ever figure out what you have to offer a brand, right? Like, you have to, it's all about what we've been talking about really owning your niche and becoming an expert. You need to know exactly who your audience is, what your expertise is, and what you have to offer, and how you can show that you have that engagement to offer, or that content, or whatever it is that you're providing. And you can't do that without blogging for a while just for the sake of it. And for a while, yeah, you are going to have to travel and pay for it and then write about it. And there's really no reason to become a travel blogger if you're in it for the money, because let me tell you, it does not pay that well. It's not going to make you rich. So you have to love travel, and you have to love sharing your insights with people and be passionate about why travel is important and why we should be doing it. And that passion and that love is going to come through in your voice and be organic. And that's going to help you build trust with your audience, which will eventually also result in things like engagement and things like conversions, which is how you can show brands that you have a brand that's, worth partnering with. for me, it's also about balancing it. Now that I do a lot of sponsorships and do a lot of sponsored travel, it's all about balancing like those sponsored trips with my organic travel content. So I kind of went too far into sponsored trips this summer, and I'm trying to pull that back and actually actively say no to sponsorships and not work with people when I'm traveling, so that I can kind of get more organic content and have more things that I want to write just for the sake of it. Because if you go too far on one side, again, you lose that trust and you lose that authenticity, and you're just going to look like you're shilling, which nobody wants to follow somebody that's like obviously shilling things, you know?
Right. Christina, do you have anything to add, or do you want me to go to a next question?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say that I think that with sponsored content, there is a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And some people are really good at creating sponsored posts that are just as engaging as their non-sponsored content. And I think that, of course, it's important to have an organic base of content that wasn't sponsored, because I think really it's in those posts where your passion comes through and, your love for travel really comes through. But at the same time, it's important as a travel blogger to also learn how to do sponsored posts really well. Because there are some people who, when they write sponsored posts, it comes off as totally an ad. It doesn't add any value. It's just, it's really bland to read. But there are others who, spin it into a story and incorporate their signature voice and their signature style. And so I do think that there is a right way to do sponsored posts, and that's something worth thinking about as well.
Absolutely. Okay, we've actually come to the top of the hour. Can you believe it? We've been doing this for an hour. So where can we find you guys? Christina, where can we find you on all the places? And then Leah, where can we find you?
Yeah, so my blog is called Happy to Wander. It's happytowander.com, and it's the same on Instagram at Happy to Wander. On Twitter, it's Happy to Wander with the number 2, because someone stole my handle. But yeah, so you can find me there. I'm always happy to chat, especially on Instagram. Feel free to DM me anytime.
So for me, my blog is called Practical Wanderlust. So practicalwanderlust.com, Facebook and Instagram at Practical Wanderlust, Twitter, Practical Wander, because I ran out of characters. Yeah, we're also on Slaying Social. So that's where we write about travel blogging resources. And that's also where we're covering impactful travel and how to affect change via a travel content and travel platforms. So you can find that at slayingsocial.com. And we have a free Facebook group as well called Slaying Social. So search for us, and we'd love to see you there and follow up on this conversation. You can ask us all of your questions there as well.
That is wonderful. We actually will probably send you guys a couple to answer, or if you can answer them in the comments after, that would be cool. Just to do some programming notes, next week we're doing food blogging trends with Audra Fullerton from The Baker Chick and Brandy O'Neill of Nutmeg Nanny. That's Thursday, July 26th at Stern. We'll be putting in a link in the Facebook group for you guys to get reminders. One thing I love, and I really hope all our food bloggers watch this too, is and one thing I love about our Facebook group is that you can ask a question, or a food blogger can ask a question, or a finance blogger can ask a question, and then all of the different genres weigh in with how they do stuff. And it can kind of open your mind to a different way to do things. So I hope, you travel guys will watch the food one, and I'm going to make sure that all of our food bloggers watch this, because you guys have some fantastic advice, especially around I learned. And I just thank you so much for taking the time to do this for everyone at Mediavine. We really love both of you, and we're so glad that you're part of the Mediavine family. So thank you for being here with us today. All right. All right, guys. So we will catch you next week. And if you have more questions, you can toss them in the comments section here. Contact Leah and Christina directly. And we will see you next week. Bye, guys.